have our featured speaker, JT Eberhard. JT is a writer and public speaker about atheism, gay rights, and more. He spent 2.5 years with Secular Student Alliance as their first high school organizer. During that time, he built the SSA's high school program and oversaw the development of groups nationwide. JT is also the co-founder of the popular Skepticon conference and served as the event's lead organizer during its first 3 years. JT currently writes a regular column for American Atheist magazine and is a gaming columnist for the feminist geek site The Secular View. JT maintains a regular speaking schedule and has appeared at the American Atheist National Convention, Aposticon, Skepticon, the SSA Leadership Conference, the American Humanist Association's National Convention, the Pennsylvania Atheist Humanist Convention, and many, many, many more. He's a very well-known national speaker, and we are so honored to have him here today. So let's give a warm welcome to JT Eberhard.
I started charging my honorarium in flattery. Thanks everybody for getting out of bed and coming to see me. I'm flattered you guys would do that. I admit I had a hard enough time myself, coming to my own gig. God, and Bill Morris, like, I see why that guy draws comparisons to James Taylor. That was really good. I have an education in music and I'm just sitting there thinking like, God, I don't want to follow that guy. You'd think this would be the easiest talk I ever give, because it's just my life story. I don't have to teach anybody anything or do any preparatory work. I actually come up and talk about a subject I'm an expert in. But it's always really hard. This talk originated 3 years ago. My memory's not that good, I'm getting old. 4? Angie knows my life better than I do. You come give this talk. I was speaking at Skepticon 4, and I'd spoken at a bunch of the previous Skepticons, and I'd become known as a speaker on atheism. I generally talk about the arguments for God's existence and why they don't convince me. And there's only so much you can really say about that. So I'm booked to speak at Skepticon, and what do I say now without boring everybody? So I wanted to talk about something that was applicable to skeptics in a way that I felt could change the world if they just had a little more information. This is now the third time I'm giving this talk, and it always just wipes me out, so bear with me. Those who have seen me speak know I'm a pretty emotional person anyway. Okay. The American Psychological Association has said several times that about 1 in every 5, 1 in every 4 Americans has a mental illness of some kind. So to a lot of people in this room, I'm speaking directly to you. To the rest of you, I'm speaking to you to explain how you can help the people like us. And the first thing is to acknowledge how many people out there really do have some kind of affliction that may not be something like cancer. People hear like, oh, you have cancer, for you. Where they hear you have a mental illness, they're like, oh, you're crazy. And I want to try and help you bridge the gap to where the two are kind of the same thing. If you watch a football game on a Sunday, and you watch the two offensive lines, one person on either side, no matter how famous they are, no matter how much money they have, no matter how much they are desired by the opposite sex, have some kind of mental problem in statistical terms. And I want to give you some insight to what that is like. So I want you to kind of empathize with me. By show of hands, how many people have ever been unconfident about their body or about their appearance? Oh, America. I can relate. And I can relate on a level that a lot of people have never experienced. And it sneaks into you. First you start feeling like everybody else, unconfident about your appearance. But then it stops you from leaving the house. And then it starts making you do things in the house. And how many people weigh yourself every morning? Oh, America. How many of you do it 20 times a day? I started doing that. And I didn't even know why initially. And then I figured it out. I couldn't think about anything else. I couldn't talk to other people because I'd zone out, worrying about what I looked like and being paranoid about what they were thinking of me, no matter how intelligent I was in conversation or how egalitarian I was in my presentation. All I could think about was that they were looking at my body. And so when I weighed myself 20 times a day, and I saw that since breakfast I'd lost 1/10 of a pound, that moment started becoming the best moment of my day. And I started kind of becoming addicted to it, because that was the happiness. There was nothing else that really made the paranoia and the obsession leave. And when you're trapped inside your house and you're not leaving, nobody can see this happening to you. You don't even notice. You think this is normal behavior. And so then once you don't leave the house in long enough, your friends start to realize something's going wrong. And my friends did. I was very lucky. But the problem is they didn't know how to deal with someone like me, who was losing 30 pounds in the space of 2 months. So what did they do? Well, a lot of them said, just buck up, kiddo. Just get better. Which is something you never say to someone with cancer or something. Just buck up, cancer. Some of them tried to drag me out of the house, and they succeeded to an extent. But that didn't help either. Just the paranoid. I would go out because I was forced to, and then come up with some excuse to leave, just because I was, you know how wallflowers are at parties. Wallflower. But looking back as someone who is now recovering, you never recover, but I'm recovering, I'm certainly better. Obviously I'm better. You can really see the difference in the intensity. And it's something, it's so hard for me to describe. It's like there's nothing else in the room. It's like time slows down. It's not just being sad. It's being obsessed. It's not being able to escape. And the worst part about being out of the house, I'm a recovering anorexic, for those who haven't put that together by now, is not only do you become addicted to weighing yourself, you become addicted to reflective surfaces. Like you're not even looking at or for people, you're looking for somewhere where you can see what you look like, just because you keep hoping that the next time you see a reflection of yourself, you're going to look thin. And you never do, but you keep looking. And so in this way, when your friend is trying to tell you that you need to get better, that there's something wrong with you and you need to improve, because you're so attached to the number on the scale or the reflection in puddles of water or glasses, because these are the only happy moments you experience, you come to an extent to hate your friends because they're trying to take that away from you. It's the most... kids in the room, it's the most fucked up thing. You just feel like you need it, and you can't see that there are people trying to help you. So the first manly man. The first time I went to the doctor, it was because I had a friend, Amber, who's a PhD student in psychology, who obviously knew what was going on, even though I didn't. And she sat me down, and she called the doctor for me, set up an appointment for me, and she went with me. And so I get into the doctor's office, and doctors don't just prescribe you pills, they need to ascertain what's going on and if you're faking or whatnot. So he's asking me all these questions, and Amber's right there in the room with me. And he asked me if I'd ever considered killing myself. And with my friend right there in the room, I had to say yes. This was not a shock to her, I don't know why I cared. But... So the doctor prescribed me an SSRI called citalopram, which I started taking. And after about 3 weeks, I was at a party with one of my friends, and his wife had brought this sour cream kind of bean chip dip, and I had a bite. And let me tell you how, when you're in the throes of anorexia, how hard it is to have a bite of something that's not celery. And it was delicious. I still remembered it. And there was no guilt. There was no anxiety. I think I had a second bite. It was great. And things started to change. I started to gain some of the weight back. I found myself in a relationship that I loved. I started doing Skepticon, which turned out to be a big hit. Who knows? Who knew it's the most out-of-control joke in the history of atheist conferences? It totally is. Ask me later and I'll tell you why that is. Thank you, sir. I was trying to get in my pants. So we're doing Skepticon, and because I'm starting to get all this national attention, and I'm starting to be invited to speak places, and people are starting to know who I am as an atheist figurehead, it got the attention of the Secular Student Alliance, who offered me the job to come there and build their high school program, which is like, you know how many atheist jobs there are out there? Not many. So this is a dream. And so of course I say yes. I had to terminate the relationship I was in. And I had to move. And it turns out, of the top 4 things that put you at risk for relapse, new job, moving, and the end of a relationship, I missed out on death of a loved one, thank goodness. But I didn't know that. So I go and everything's going great. And because everything's going great, I start asking myself if I should stop taking my meds. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm a writer for a living. I like thinking. Even if it's just about video games and theory crafting, I'm just obsessive about figuring things out. And the drugs I was taking made me a little fuzzy. It's a small price to pay for not being suicidal and being able to eat and enjoy food, but I thought, if I'm better, maybe I can get that part of my psychological faculties back. And so, without being a good skeptic and doing my research, I stopped taking my meds. And I was fine for a while. Then it started creeping back in. And the stupid thing is, until you've been, I won't say well, because when I said you're never well, but until you're recovered to an extent, you don't realize when it's coming back to bite you. It's a very, very sneaky thing. And so I stopped eating. Some days I had to leave work early just because I couldn't focus on anything else. And fortunately, my boss, Liz, was completely supportive. She's the best boss anyone could ever have. She's the reason I tell people to donate to the Secular Student Alliance, just because she's there. Nothing she's ever a part of will fail. So I'm back to, I think I got the job. I started in January of 2011, and by the end of February, I was back in the emergency room, and getting pumped full of fluids and getting new meds. And because I was tempted to self-harm, I gave my pills to Liz, and every day when I got to work, there was one right by my computer. Good on her. So things went on, and that summer was a really rough time. And even though I was on my meds, life can still get hard, and when life gets hard, that's when you're in the danger of this reaching back and grabbing you. And there was one day where the paranoia just came flooding in. And it's the weirdest thing. It's the battle between your conscious mind and your subconscious, of all the things you consciously know to be true, and this force that's telling you all these terrible things about yourself, and sometimes you lose. And I did, and I just panicked. When governments that torture people for a very specific reason, they think there's only so much pain a person can take before they'll do anything to make it stop. And when you're in my position, when you have a brain that's malfunctioning, sometimes you get in that position, you'll do anything to make it stop. And that's what I did. That day, I emptied half my bottle of pills into my hand and I swallowed them. And I had a friend there, fortunately, who, you don't want to drag your friends down with you. So when people worry about you, you always say, "No, I'm fine. Don't worry about me." And you're losing all this weight, and it's obvious to people who know you that something's wrong. So she knew something was wrong. And I was telling her, "No, I'm fine. Don't worry. I'm just tired. Now I'm going into serotonin shock." And thankfully, she didn't listen to me, either because she loves me or she hates me, one of the two. wound up in the hospital, and I survived. My heart rate got incredibly low, but I survived, thank goodness. I'm glad I survived. If you talk to most people who survive suicide attempts, they're generally glad they lived. So back on drugs. And that's when I started working out. And I fell in love with it. And my condition transitioned. What I had was called anorexia nervosa. Anorexic nervous, easy enough. And I transitioned to what's called anorexia athletica, which is an obsession with exercise. I would work out for hours a day. I would work out till I threw up, and work out till I threw up again. Which people say, like, oh, that's terrible. I always say, if you have to pick a mental illness, pick the one that gets you in really good shape real quick. And if you've got to have one. and boy, it did. And the thing is, like, my belt size was going down, and I was really happy about that. But I kept looking at myself in the mirror, and I didn't see the difference. So I thought to myself that I was going to start taking pictures of the mirror. You know how people do, where they, every week, and they compare the pictures. And when I took the first picture and looked at it, it wasn't what I saw. It was something just night and day difference. I mean, what the picture was not what was in the mirror. So then I got diagnosed with hallucinations, which at first is really freaky, but once you get past it, like, it's just cool. Like, I wish I could show people what I see. This is just so nifty. Mental illness, it's like free drugs. But that eventually went away. I still do have hallucinatory episodes when I'm down, but it happens extremely seldom. And it's not something that terrifies me anymore. I'm sorry for those of you who are tearing up with me. Represent. So for those of you who have never felt anything like this, I hope just this story has given you an idea of what it's like, and at least made you want to at least be able to recognize when people around you are suffering in this type of way, and want to help in some kind of way. How can you help? The reason I decided to give the personal portion of this talk at Skepticon, aside from trying to relate to everyone, is because of the admiration I have for the gay rights movement. I mean, this whole idea of coming out of the closet is just great, because so many Americans are realizing for the first time that not only do they know gay people, but they actually really like gay people, or even love gay people. Shit works. So there's this huge stigma on mental illness, like I talked about earlier. Nobody wants to be diabetic and have a deficiency of those chemicals, but no one thinks that the diabetic is responsible for their illness. Whereas if you have a deficiency of serotonin or dopamine or norepinephrine in your brain, people are like, oh, you're crazy, you just need to buck up. We need to defeat that stigma. It starts with people coming out of the closet, which is a problem because nobody wants to be crazy and nobody wants to obligate their friends to try and take care of them. So it's up to us to see when people around us might be having psychological issues. And it's different for everything. For depression, it could be the withdrawn. If you're an anorexic, or if you're dealing with an anorexic, aside from them losing weight, watch to see if they put mustard on everything. Because if you're anorexic, you're eating things that are low calorie, which is pretty stale taste, and mustard is 0 calorie. Anorexics tend to just slather everything in mustard. There's different signs for different mental illnesses. Read up, try to become aware. But the big thing is to make them feel that it's okay to be sick in this way, the same as it's okay to be sick in any other way. One of the stories I always tell is when I was in Ohio at the Secular Student Alliance, I was hanging out with some people I just met, and I was having a pretty good rapport with this one woman. And we got to shooting the shit, and she asked me what I did for a living. I said, oh, I'm an atheist for a living, and I've got the best job. And I always expect people to react weirdly to that. It's like, oh, you get paid to be an atheist? She countered with that she was a dominatrix for a living. How do you beat that? But because we were becoming such friends so quickly, I then found out that she'd been bipolar 2, diagnosed with bipolar 2 since she was 10 years old, medicated for it, and just loved people with mental illnesses. And so much so that for Christmas, she got all her friends pill boxes. And so when it came to light that I was a recovering anorexic, her immediate and honest response was, "Oh my God, that's so cool." And I thought she was out of her fucking mind. Like, that's not cool. But then I gave this talk and I came out about it and I started writing about my bouts with mental illness. And I was giving a talk at the American Atheist Convention, I think in Des Moines. And when you're a speaker at these conferences and when you have some level of whatever pseudo-internet fame I have, like, you can tell when people are nervous to approach you. Like, you just keep, they keep looking at you, and it's flattering, but at the same time, just come talk to me. But finally, at the end of the day, she got the courage and she brought us up. She's like, "Hi, I read your blog, and I just wanted you to know that I have X, Y, and Z mental illnesses too." And my immediate and honest response was, "Oh my God, that's so cool." And then I realized, like, holy shit, I just said that. And I meant it. And that's the state I look, not that, you don't have to say that mental illnesses are cool and you're being sick, it sucks. But at the same time, if we could get that reaction other than like, "Oh, you're crazy," because that's what we're afraid of, that would go a long way towards helping people like me. The last thing you can do is, another thing that keeps us from coming out of the closet or talking to people and getting the help we need and just trying to beat it on our own and toughen up, is there's all this terrible information out there about mental illness. For instance, there's this idea going around that SSRIs, the pills that essentially saved my life, actually increase the rate of suicide in the people who take them. How many people believe that's true? There's one person who's right. It is actually true. But it's a grain of truth that keeps people from taking these life-saving drugs. Here's how it works. These pills make the anxiety go away. The anxiety keeps you from being motivated. And the pills take that away, so you start feeling motivated. The problem is, there's a 3-day window where you start being motivated and the anxiety goes away before the depression goes away. And inside that 3-day window, the rate of suicide actually does go up. So what's the solution? Well, it's not to take the drugs, because we need the drugs sometimes. I need these drugs. We need people around us, watching us, giving us 1 pill a day, and making sure we get through that 3-day window. And we need those people, telling the people who are saying, these drugs end lives, not save them, to shut the hell up. And because there's this stigma on being crazy, and admittedly, I am crazy, and I'm okay with that. I was never happier in my life the day I finally admitted I'm crazy, and I don't give a shit. But because there's this stigma on it, hearing it from us doesn't have the same impact as having it come from someone who is an ally to people like me. And that's something the mentally healthy can do. So I think I'm pushing my time. I don't want to monopolize your session. And by the way, this Oasis thing is just great. I'm someone who has been a free-thinking activist for years now, and to see this many people gathered in a room every week is just, this makes my day. So I don't want to monopolize the time. I'll answer questions later. Thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you for not judging me and not thinking I'm a sissy man for this. But I appreciate it. And if you want to try and make a difference as a mentally healthy ally, or if you just want to talk about your own mental illnesses, I'm easy to find. Thanks a lot.